Hi, and thank you for tuning in for another knife review. This is the Spyderco Tenacious model C122G. It is actually part of a series of 4 knives from Spyderco, the entire series being the Ambitious, the Persistence, the Tenacious, which is shown here, and the Resilience. And those are, the real variation is in size. They all have the same basic materials, and they're basically just different sizes from small to large. I've owned this one for several months now. I bought this to replace my old work knife, which was a CRKT M16 14Z, and I carried that for about 5 years on my work belt and just beat the tar out of it. And I needed something new. The blade was kind of failing, the lock was failing on the last one. And I looked around and I narrowed it down to a few different models, and I've always kind of had a slight preference for Spyderco and their designs, so I thought I'd give this one a chance. And I've been very happy with it. You know, the short review is it's an excellent knife. Do not hesitate to go out and buy one, and you will find some excellent use for it. It is a 3.39 inch long blade. Overall length is 7.76 inches. Those measurements are from Spyderco. Using my ruler, I can't get quite that exact on it, but those are pretty close, so I'd say they're accurate. Spyderco says it weighs 4.1 ounces. My scale says 4 ounces and kind of bumps up to 4.1 ounces, so that's also accurate. Blade steel is 8CR13 MOV, so a little bit softer, but it's a good steel. It holds a very keen edge. You can get it really, really razor sharp, and it holds its edge for a decent amount of time. We'll get into that in a moment. The blade shape is, you know, somewhat of a drop point, and it is of course a full flat ground blade. And you can see on the blade itself, got that little Spyderco logo. Looks kind of like a big puffy tick or a chunky spider. Got the Spyderco name there and the 8CR13 MOV at the back of the blade. And on this side, kind of hard to see, there it is, it says China. So this is made in China. But it is an excellent value. And it'll run you about $30 is the going rate right now. Okay, there is one other version. There's a newer version of this knife that came out that was just recently released. It has a black coated blade, but otherwise it is identical in materials and how it's designed. Everything's the same, but it does have a black blade. So if that appeals to you, that is also available for about the same price. Handle materials, we've got G10 over stainless steel liners. And those are skeletonized liners. You might be able to see a little bit there on the right hand side of the frame. But they are kind of drilled out, so there's some holes in there to lighten it. And they're very thick. These are really thick steel liners. So it's a very strong design, really tough. There's no flex or bend to the handle at all. It's got some light, medium to light texturing to the G10. So it provides a good amount of grip. It's not extremely aggressive, but in my experience, it doesn't slip out of your hand even when your fingers are wet. Even when I'm wearing gloves, it's still very grippy. So that's a nice amount of texturing on the handles. It does have jimping. We've got some on the back of the blade there, that thumb ramp, and we've also got some in the choil area, right there where the little bit of the liner extends over under the tang of the blade. And both of those are very well textured. They're very comfortable, and they do lock your hand into place very well. So I'm happy with that. Overall handle design is quite comfortable. It's a little on the short side, so when you can see just a little bit of the handle extending past at the end of my hand, the end of my finger there. I kind of would like it to be a little bit longer, you know, something more along the lines of the Endura or the Paramilitary, but it's not at all uncomfortable. I just kind of like the longer handles, so it is very nice, very comfortable, and it is of a decent size. It does have a lanyard hole, and that will easily accommodate some 550 paracord. If you want to put your fancy paracord knots in there, that'll work just fine. And of course we do have a pocket clip Wouldn't be much of a folding Spyderco if it didn't have a pocket clip. And it is 4-way positionable. So left hand, right hand, tip up or tip down. It's all available, which is nice. It sits decently low in my pocket with about 3/4 of an inch of the handle sticking up. And it sits really flat. And it doesn't become a nuisance. It's not in the way. Very comfortable in my pocket. And the overall balance, as far as when you're holding it in your hand, it's a little bit handle heavy. Those steel liners kind of make it want to tilt back in your hand, but it's still very comfortable, very functional, not at all a problem. Obviously you can see with just about any Spyderco, you've got your round opening hole, and that can be opened with just a slow thumb movement. You can flick it with your thumb to snap it open quickly, or even use your middle finger, which I knew if I tried to do it on frame it wasn't gonna go on the first try. There you go. So something a little different there. Those are all viable opening options. Very easy to open. Even with gloves, the opening hole is large enough to where I use this as my work knife, so it opens easily with my cumbersome, clumsy work gloves. So that's also nice. Blade centering in the handle, not the best. Not the best I've ever seen. Leaning a little bit there. That tends to happen with some liner lock knives, so I'm not really going to fault it. And it doesn't rub. The blade doesn't rub against the scales, so no biggie. You know, it doesn't look absolutely perfect. Stuff like that doesn't really bother me that much, and it shouldn't bother you either. So just a note, not perfectly centered, but big whoop. As we've been looking at already, this is a liner lock. It is very strong, holds the blade in place very well. It's locked up pretty much square under the tang of that blade. So, you know, it's neither early nor late. It's probably somewhere in the middle, but I'm happy with it. And again, it is really, really strong. As far as if there's any wobble or wiggle, up and down, absolutely nothing. And as I tend to find on a lot of my knives, you know, left and right, side to side, if I really crank on the blade, I can get a little bit of wiggle or wobble, but I think this is generally what most people would say. They would refer to it as having no play. So it's very strong. I've been using it for months, and it hasn't been any play introduced into it, so that's nice. Overall strength is excellent, and I have a lot of confidence in both the blade and the handle. I'm not worried that it's going to close on me or that it's going to fold or fail at any time. It slices very well, and that wide, you know, that very wide, full flat ground blade really lends itself well to slicing. I use this as my work eraser. So if you know anything about construction surveying, if you see the guy out there with the instrument and the other guy holding up a rod and they're taking measurements, they'll write down the measurements on a wooden lath, on a big wooden stake. And when you write it down with a permanent marker, when you make a mistake, the quickest way to remove it is to just take your knife and slice off a little bit of that writing and just slice off a thin layer of the wood. Well, for years I was using that CRKT, and it did the job, but it wasn't really the best knife for it. And this one is an amazing replacement. So the Spyderco Tenacious slices through those thin little bits of wood like you know, a hot knife through butter, as they say. So it works very well for that, and it sharpens quickly and easily. Here's a piece of paper. I know some people like to see a little bit of slicing. And I actually haven't sharpened this. I haven't sharpened this in days and days, so this is actually even after I've used it at work to slice through some of my steaks and lath at work. And I've used it in the kitchen for cutting up food and fruits, vegetables. Works amazingly well for that. I've used it to cut apart cardboard boxes, to break them down and throw them in the recycling bin. I've used it to open packages and tape. I've probably even shown a few videos already where I've used it to open some packages. So, you know, it's just a great all-around, general-purpose, utility kind of knife. You know, we're not talking anything fancy, nothing tactical. You know, I wouldn't rely on it as like my one and only blade in some sort of a survival situation, but for everyday, you know, maybe I would. But either way, for everyday stuff, can't be beat, and just phenomenal knife, phenomenal value. The price is so low, it's just really, really impressive. It holds an edge for a decent amount of time. If you're using it real hard, that 8CR13 MOV is going to need some touch-ups. So I generally will strop mine every day or every other day. You know, after I come home from work, I'll take it out, strop it up real quick, and it's back to a razor's edge. I used it for a little bit of landscaping or gardening in the yard. I was cutting up some chunks of grass that had started to overgrow or overtake my irrigation system. They were kind of encroaching on the sprinklers. So I used it to cut those back a little bit, and I kind of hit the concrete. I hit my sidewalk a few times with it, and that killed the edge. You know, as you can imagine, that killed the edge almost immediately. But I had it sharp in like 5 minutes. So even though I beat the tar out of the edge and it was really, really dull, it sharpens so quick, it's almost a matter of, you know, who cares? There's some harder, tougher steels that might hold an edge longer, but, you know, the softer steels, they sharpen so quickly, it just, you know, it's kind of fun to sit and sharpen sometimes. So it's really, again, it's no deal at all. It's just a quick little touch up and off you go. So while it doesn't hold an edge for the longest amount of time, I think that it does admirably. And again, this is all in keeping with the price, you know, keeping in perspective with how much it costs. I think that it holds an edge famously. And the overall looks, you know, my overall opinion of how it looks, the overall design is great. Some people don't like Spyderco's designs. I happen to be a big fan. They are unconventional, they're weird, they're odd looking, but after a while you really grow to love them and you start to really see a lot of the beauty in them. So to me, it's a very nice looking knife, and it's so functional that if you didn't like the way that it looks, once you hold one and you use one, and this is what people say about a lot of Spyderco designs, just get one, you know, put it in your hand and use it, and you will immediately see the beauty of it, because it's just going for function over form. And in that way, it ends up being a very wonderful knife, and you begin to, you know, I know, haha, it's a wonderful knife. I don't think I've said that yet, but it is. It's a wonderful knife. So there. But once you get one and you use it, you begin to like the way that it looks, because you understand why it looks the way it does and why Spyderco made the choices that they did in the overall design. Fit and finish on this particular knife is amazing. Again, for $30, and you can find it online just about anywhere. I imagine it can be found in person. I don't have a lot of brick and mortar knife stores near me anymore, so I am not really familiar with how these are. You know, you might have one at your Walmart or something, I'm not sure. But online, you can find them just about everywhere for around $30. And again, I keep saying over and over, but just mind-blowing value. Super great value. Similar knives, the other knife that I was kind of deciding between with this one was the Ontario Rat 1. I did go with the Tenacious, and I have not picked up an Ontario Rat 1 yet, so I can't actually say how it compares performance-wise. But if you're looking for another knife with, you know, similar design, you know, with as far as being within the same price range and giving you similar performance, full flat ground blade, that would be a good choice. Another one might be the Delica full flat ground blade as far as size and overall performance. But as far as value, you know, this one wins for me. And I would like to try the Ontario knife eventually, but for now it's going to be hard to find an excuse to pick one up, because this one's working for my main work knife so well. So as far as knives that offer a better value, not too many out there. I will give you some visual comparisons, which I usually like to do. So let's show the Endura. This is actually an older version of the Endura, but overall size, you can kind of get an idea. You can see how much wider the Tenacious blade is, and length, they're fairly similar. And of course, my favorite EDC knife right now, Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Let's put those two next to each other. Now those are real similar in overall, you know, blade width and length. Even the handles are pretty samey. But price, you know, we're talking $100 here, or I think this was $90, but $90 to $100 here, $30. So, you know, it's hard to beat. So there's those two. Here's another quickie, a Kershaw Vapor, another full flat ground blade. This is a nice value knife. This is probably closer in the $20 to $25 range, but a little heavy and more of a gentleman's knife, something you'd carry around town. Although this is a heavy duty handle, and it'll hold up to a lot of abuse. Other quick size comparisons. There is a Victorinox Swiss Army knife Tinker. and a classic, just for fun. If you got a classic kicking around, you want to know how that's going to size up, there you go. So overall, I highly recommend it. It is a great knife at a tremendous price. I know it's been reviewed and talked about and shown on forums and photographed and videoed ad nauseum, but I think it bears repeating that Spyderco just has a real winner with the Tenacious, and in fact that entire series of knives, the other ones I mentioned before, the Ambitious, the Persistence, and the Resilience as well, just off the charts value, you know, great prices and great performance. So if you have not already picked one up yet, you owe it to yourself to run out and grab one. As soon as you scrape up 30 bucks, get one, check it out. I guarantee you're going to love it. Thanks very much for watching. I will bring you more video reviews soon. Bye.